Oh yana hey ya we hey ya hey ya. Oh yana hey ya we hey ya hey ya. Oh yana hey ya we hey ya hey ya.
Scannox Wagwego. My name's Michelle Thomas. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about mindfulness. And I grew up here at Six Nations, and I'm a Seneca Nation Bear Clan woman, traditional person. Was very fortunate to be within the family that I had. We had quite a bit of traditional teachings and knowledge and exposure to a lot of our culture and language ceremonies. And so now as an adult, I use that. I use that in my everyday life, and how I relate to people and how I see the world. My worldview is very much based on those formative years and the things that I was taught by my teachers and elders and my family. So Ellie wanted me to talk a little bit about how I came to be involved in this project. For myself, I really started as a volunteer just because I believe in the message. I believe in the history of our ancestors and the peace that they tried to bring to our communities and to our nations, and that's something that's really important to me. And I'm always looking for ways to align myself with something that promotes our ancestors and our true way of life and our values. And I think that this is something that does it. So I just started volunteering and helping when I could. And then last year, I'm losing track of time now, I think it was last year, I was more involved pretty much on a daily, doing the ground crew and volunteering that way. And that was really challenging. It was really challenging because it was like as soon as you open your eyes till you close your eyes at night. But I was very well prepared, I guess, because growing up the way that I did, I was raised to be a very hard worker within our longhouse community, and that was nothing new for me to work like that. That's very common. So but yeah, maybe not so much in the physical way that it was, but working hard is very common for me. So I didn't mind it, but it was just a lot of different tasks and a handful of people trying to oversee it all. So yeah, it was really challenging, but I did enjoy it. And at times I wish that I could have participated more, but it was just a flurry of activity and I can't remember from day to day what happened because it was just so busy. But yeah, so that's a little bit about myself and how I've become involved in some of the planning and behind the scenes things. So today I wanted to talk to you about mindfulness and myself too. Like I'm I guess what you would call a seer. I see into, I have visions, so I see into that other world, that spirit world, and that's also a big part of who I am. And because I can connect with our ancestors and spirit and receive messages and all of that stuff. So I guess my message to you today is kind of about how to incorporate some of those aspects into this journey. Like if you're participating or thinking of becoming involved, how to really make that a focal point of your commitment, I guess, to coming on this journey. And so for me, it's really about remembering that when you're choosing to come on this journey, that it's a real living, breathing history of our people. This, it's not just a, get up and, oh, I'm gonna paddle today, or oh, this sounds fun, or oh, I have vacation time and I'm gonna go off and do something fun. It's not that at all. Like mindfulness to me is when we incorporate our body, mind, and spirit all together, and we have that ability to think about that history and to think about our spiritual well-being and to really allow ourselves to be silent and to contemplate and do that self-reflection, and not just in the moment but throughout the day. and it's a daily challenge to come to that place of mindfulness. But I think that that's a big part of this journey, and can be something that each person would be responsible for integrating those pieces and thinking about, especially because you have the physical of the paddling, actually doing the work, paddling and being on the water, and then you have the emotional pieces too, because I know some participants have shared with me their experiences of just breaking down while they're paddling and having emotional outbursts, or having awarenesses of something that they didn't know was coming up for them, which makes sense because as you're paddling, you're breathing, right? You're connecting more with your breathing, you're connecting more to your heart chakra, to your energy. It's opening, your circulation is running. So anything that we had sitting here on our chest, and that energy there that's getting unblocked, is going to come up, and an opportunity for it to be released. So someone that is mindful would take that opportunity and embrace it and acknowledge it, and use it as self-reflection, healing, rather than just saying, oh God, I'm angry, and just put it down the trap door and push it away. No, that's not what it's about. You're on this trip, this journey, for a reason, and whatever that is that may or may not come up for you is an essential part for something that you needed to experience. And the water is there, the land is there, the air is there, the sun is there, all of our natural elements that we embrace and that we thank every day. Like our Thanksgiving address it's not just a nice fun way to gather in the morning, it's a daily living, breathing prayer. And so you use that throughout your day. So that example I'll go back to, if you do say, I'm going to use anger, say if I'm paddling away, and anybody that knows me knows that I'm a landlubber, I'm not a paddler, I haven't been recruited, so this is just a scenario. So if I was paddling away and suddenly I noticed, geez, I'm gritting my teeth and I'm feeling this anger coming up in me, and my paddle's digging deep, and I can feel that coming up. What I might do is I would probably just acknowledge it, and then I would probably pray in the moment and ask. And if I had tobacco, I would take some and I would probably put a pinch in the water, and I would just use my breath, and I would just say, okay, I need some help, and I would ask for that water to take that anger. I would maybe I would ask for the wind to help my breath, to release it through my breath. Maybe I would ask the sun to be the strength that I need, because the sun is our eldest brother, the sun, right? So maybe I need that strength, that warrior strength from male energy, that is the positive side of anger, right? When anger is used properly, it's strength. And so maybe I would ask for that sun to sit with me through this paddle, so that I can learn about anger. I can understand what's the lesson here for me, so that I can release it, right? So those are some ways that you can really just make the teachings that you receive on this journey an integrated part of your time, because I think that's really, really important. Because yes, we're traveling here together as a group, and people become very connected together as a family, but we're also individuals, and we all need to be responsible for our own path and our own journey, and accountable for the things that come up, because we're not going to be able to do the work of coming together in a peaceful way and sustaining peaceful relationships if we hold on to whatever we have, and if we don't take care of those issues and repress it, and don't take advantage of those opportunities that come to us, right? That they might seem like disastrous and chaos, and it might not seem cool to lose your shit, in front of like a big group of people. You might be embarrassed or whatever to have some sort of a meltdown, but trust me, it's all part of the process, and it's all happening for a reason. If that's what you're meant to be experiencing, then you're meant to be experiencing it. And that's why the group becomes communal in that sense, because we learn how to hold space. You know, we learn how to be connected so that we're either supporting someone or we're being supported, right? And it's the interconnectedness is what helps to bring those relationships in a good way, where we can learn those boundaries, which is a very important part of the two-row wampum as well, to have those boundaries of respect and honor and friendship, and allow people to do what they need to do, but just hold space and not to be invasive, you know, and to just paddle along with them, right, and show that support. So being mindful is a really powerful message, because sometimes we forget, right? We're all human beings, and we forget about that importance of taking those times to have that self-reflection. So because we're all human and we have moments like that where we're off, we're not in alignment, one of the things that I've kind of gotten in the practice of doing is at the end of my day, I have that time before I go to bed, just before I'm drifting off, and I'll say, okay, what could I have done differently today, you know? And I'll try to have, I guess, a sense of resolution in my mind of things that acknowledge maybe my faults or my weaknesses, and acknowledge the things that I did do well. And if there's something that I need to be more aware of, I ask, okay, if there's something I'm missing, show me tomorrow if I'm lucky enough to wake up, so that I'll know how I can improve, and that how I can, you know, be more in alignment with spreading the message of whatever I need to be doing. So that's something that I've kind of gotten in the practice of, and it's helped me to be more accountable to myself, you know, because if I can't live what I'm teaching to other people, then there's not really any point to doing it, in my opinion, you know. And so I have to really be aware of that, and because I do a lot of work for, well, I work for myself, but I also do a lot of this kind of work, working with spirit, working with our ancestors, working for Creator, and I call it self-employment, but really that's what I do, is I use that that way of thinking in my business to connect with people and to share what I need to share. So at the end of the day is a nice way to kind of do that wrap up, and then, you know, you're not hanging on to things when you go to bed either. You're not cutting yourself up, and you're not being critical of yourself. It's just an opportunity to let go of whatever happened that day, and to acknowledge that, you know, tomorrow is another chance to try and try and do better. So that's, to me, that's a good way of, it's helped me to be more aware, and, like I say, less critical of myself, and just more forgiving, more compassionate toward myself, because I had to relearn that, you know, like coming up from the family that I did, you know, we had a lot of intergenerational hangovers, you know, from residential school, and that kind of thinking, and negative messages and negative beliefs of who we thought that we were. And one of the things that came from that is critical thinking, right? Because, you know, my mom was pretty good at learning what was taught to her, and yeah, she passed that on to me, to all of us, I believe. And so I've had to relearn how I think about myself, and to learn more forgiveness and more compassion, and to be more empathetic toward myself. And so that's one way that's really helped me to do it, is at the end of the day, and to just carry on the next day with a clean slate, and to be grateful that you even woke up, you know, and your first thought is, okay, here's another chance, and I woke up again, and that's good, and then you start again. So that's another way of thinking of mindfulness. For me, I guess, just being with the journey, I'm thinking of ways to integrate this too, of being on the journey, is there's so many opportunities to speak, you know, like to talk with one another, to share information, to just connect. And for myself, I'm a really big believer in silence, and it's hard for me sometimes to be in a group because I have so much going on in my head all the time. I am often connecting on a spiritual level, and that requires a lot of silence at times. And so sometimes that mindfulness piece is just about knowing when to talk, you know. And for myself, that's a cultural difference that I struggled with. Like most of my life, I'm getting better at it, but an example of it is I thought that I was, that I was pretty much okay with having non-native friends and things like that. In high school, I had friends that weren't native, and I thought, oh, okay, I can go to university and I'm gonna blend in and no problem, no sweat. And I remember I had massive culture shock, like the first month, I'd say, and I only went to Brock, which at the time in the early 90s was really small. It was just like a big high school, essentially. So, but I remember going to that school and sitting in the lecture hall with 600-700 people and wanting to go into a fetal position because everyone was so loud, like so deafeningly loud. Like they couldn't just sit there and be quiet and be still. And I think that's a real cultural thing for us as Oklahoma people, is that we have that piece where we're a little bit quieter and a little bit more self-reflective. At least we are in my family anyway. And so I was kind of more comfortable with that and not taking up so much space, I guess, and being in a room full of all different sort of nationalities and ethnicities. Everyone was competing for space and time and hear me here, and I was just like, oh my God. It just really, it was really hard. It was really, really challenging. So think about that. Think about that when you're on the water. Think about, the line that you're traveling in, and who's traveling on your side and who's traveling in front of you and behind you, and think about what they bring, historically, culturally. What's, they're in the Turawampan, we had a ship and then we had a canoe, right? And there's vast differences. We can have commonalities, but there's a lot of differences too. And so thinking about how are we going to bridge that gap, right, between what you may need and what the person across from you may need. And one of the things that they may need is silence, quiet. Because when we close our thoughts, we close everything down, that's when love comes in, That's when spirit comes in. That's when it's magic, because it's like an opportunity to embrace all the things that we're trying to be. That's when we hear the loudest answers, is when we're silent, And so if we're always chat, and we're so uncomfortable in our own skin to not be silent, then sit with that, Ask yourself why, and maybe try to work with that and see where that takes you. And it's just all a part of being mindfulness of your own things that are there for you, and your self-reflection, and things that you may want to improve. And it's all opportunities, right? It's not looking at yourself and judging yourself and saying, oh, I should do this and I need to be this. It's not that at all. It's looking at yourself and just observing, and being witness to how you are acting and how other people are acting, and knowing what the difference is too, and knowing what is that person's and what is your lesson, and not taking on other things, right? All of those things are a challenge when we live communally, right? Because essentially that's what you're doing for like 10 days, is living as a community. And so when we come together, all different walks of life, it's a challenge because everybody's different. Everybody has their own way of thinking, their own way of being and doing. Families, kids, parents, all of these different, contexts come into play. So yeah, that's one way that I think that mindfulness would be really, really important, as well as even just thinking about your own ancestors too. That's a huge part of mindfulness. I remember, I think it might have been 2 years ago now. My time is all messed up here because of COVID. But maybe 2 years ago, we had been out and I was taking stuff from, coming back from Knots Landing and unloading the trailer and stuff like that. And everybody was gone and off doing something else, and there was like 10 minutes where I had like this quiet space with no one around and nothing to do. So I came up here and I sat on this bench, and I was just sitting there and just kind of thinking and watching as people were doing what they were going to do down at the water there. And I just remember that feeling of sitting there, and there were these men that came and sat with me, and they were like in spirit, and I just sat there and I felt so like our whole entire purpose of doing this was validated, because it felt good to know that those spirits were with us and that they were watching what they were seeing, what we were doing. And to me it was almost like approval, that they approved that it was a good thing what we were doing, because that's what they tried to do in their time, is to bring that peace and build relationships, and they tried, you know, they did their best, and we're trying too, we're doing our best. So we have to remember that this isn't fake, you know, what we're doing. It's real. It's our real living, breathing history. So think about your own ancestry and what where you want to go with that, and what, you know, what do you want that legacy to be for yourself, you know? And that's, I guess, would be my message of mindfulness and how to integrate it in this journey that you might find yourself on. So, yeah.
Michelle, I have a question for you.
I guess
From a paddler's perspective, I'm just wondering, because wintertime is coming for us all now, and we may not be paddling as much as we would like to, how can we keep that mindfulness in our own lives when we're used to having the availability of the water and the paddling and the camaraderie of the Turo family, and then because of the cold that comes upon us in the winter, what do you see as maybe a substitute for mindfulness deprivation, I guess, if you want to call it? Because number one, I mean, it's going to be, you know, the pandemic is certainly on the rise again, so we may be scaling back social interactions again, and maybe you can just give a little bit of advice or something on how we can manage personally as we move forward through the winter months.
Well, I guess I can only answer that by talking about my own experience, what I cope with, and what got me through the isolation piece, like when we were in phase 1 and a lockdown, especially here in our community. You know, we essentially became a gated community for what, 2 months, maybe 3 months. And what got me through that time period is creating more of a daily ritual. And because before COVID, I didn't really have one. I guess I was just kind of got up and did my thing, had coffee, you know, tried to have some quiet time, but I never did it purposefully, right? So when that all started happening, I recognized I needed to stay off of, like Twitter for me that was my outlet. Like I had all my news, everything news was all on Twitter, and everything, like I tried to be so politically aware with all what's happening in across Canada, Indigenous issues, politically, government. I really like that. So Twitter is where I'd have all that stuff, right? And live updates and things like that. And so I recognized pretty quick into the game with COVID that I can't do that. because it was a daily bombardment of stuff, and it was just so heavy and fear-based, and and my dad he's very much into American politics and news and things like that, government stuff, and I couldn't, I just kind of had to take a break from all of that. Like which is really unusual for me. Normally I'm very much into that, but I had to just say, no, I can't do that, because it was just like trying to pull me down into this big pit or something, and it just got more and more intense. So I just gave that all up. I haven't been on Twitter in quite some time, and I just kind of left the news and all that stuff behind. So I had this time in the morning, because that's what I would do. That's how I would start my day, right? I'd look at the news, go on Twitter and read all my articles and things like that. But when I stopped doing that, I had time. So then I started to think, okay, well, I took something away, what am I going to add to it? So what I added was my ritual. I'm just going through the long version of Thanksgiving address, which I've been trying to learn for I don't know how long. So I'm just trying I do that every day, and then really do a word study, like a language study as I do it, have my coffee, and then I write, and then do prayer, do meditation. And sometimes, because it was COVID and there was not a lot going on, I was self-employed, I am self-employed, and so all of my work was essentially canceled. So sometimes I'd be sitting outside for like 2 hours, 3 hours in the morning, just doing that, and I would just kind of went with it, and it was kind of crazy, but that's what happened. And so I think really creating a ritual for yourself it doesn't have to be anything like that, but it certainly should be something that you enjoy doing, and that's going to raise your vibration and empower you and uplift you, and put that into your on a daily routine. Like whether it's you're a morning person, do it in the morning, whether you like to do it at night, like whatever your schedule is, but create it and put it in there, and don't slack. Like a ritual is when you do it repetitively. So, for me, I did that every day, right? And the great thing that came out about it is that I wrote a book from my time. That's what COVID did for me, because I was writing a lot during that time. And so you never know, when you surrender yourself to mindfulness, you never know where it's going to take you, and what's going to come out of that. But it's about just creating a process for yourself to, have the freedom to get your needs met, I guess, when everything's out of control in your life. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, it certainly does. I just want to thank you so much for that. And I'm looking at the winter as positively as I can. And for me, I guess it'll be a time of self-awareness and self-growth and reflection. So I think as I sit around the fireplace at night and have a cup of tea, that'll be sort of my time.
Yeah.
To just that I will take that time. So I think that is definitely going to work for me. And for those people that are watching this video, I hope everybody gets a chance to take the time to be mindful. And I think more and more, as we progress into 2021, it's definitely going to be almost a mandatory prescription to well-being.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just something to add to that too is creativity can be definitely be something in mindfulness. And we have some creative people that come on the journey. I can't remember her name. Adam's girlfriend that does the Jocelyn, yes, something like that, like artwork.
Yeah.
Any kind of creative thing that you can do, you can lose yourself in it. And when you lose yourself in it, you find your mind, right? Because you lose your thoughts, and then again you're just open to whatever. And so that's can be another good outlet, is doing something creative and just having fun with it. Yeah. So peace out, peeps. Enjoy and take care of yourself, everybody.